So, I mean, talking about this stuff, I would say that the big thing is never let any opportunity go. So, we're in college, we're at Natal University, and the dang chemistry labs took like all day. And we're sitting in chemistry lab, and I got my two chemistry buddies, Matt Carlisle and Jerome Truer, and I just barely knew these guys. They just were my two chemistry lab mates, right? And so they start talking about this guy that came up to them, Tim Biggs. And Tim Biggs, in South Africa, sports rule, right? You do everything. Everybody does every kind of sport. Tim Biggs is already a national hero. He's the guy that even he was at college with us. I think he was a year ahead of us, but he's already won the Limpopo Marathon twice. And Tim's this little guy. He's not very big, maybe 5'4", really stocky little guy. And the Limpopo Marathon is where you can either do it in a double, it's a kayak race, or you can do it in a single. But most of the race is actually running. So you kayak down this little river, the Umsunduzi River, and then you jump out every once in a while, and you literally take your kayak and you put it on top of your head. We built these cradle things on top of our heads, and then you run along like you got this 15-foot hat on top of your head. And Tim, was just awesome at this. And so Tim had come up to Jerome, actually. Jerome was one of the top kayakers even in those days. Later on became world champion, and these guys actually ended up in the end being the first guys to do the whole Amazon. But that's a different story that unfortunate. So this guy had come up to Tim, guy from Francois Oudendal had come up to Tim and said, hey, I want you to come and do the Limpopo with me. Turns out that this guy, he was an Afrikaans guy from Pretoria, he's an Afrikaner. In South Africa you've got the English and the Afrikaans. The Afrikaans were in charge at that time. It was their government in power, the apartheid government. And Francois, it turns out, had lost two of his friends on this river. The Limpopo River is up in the north of Africa, South Africa. Big old river, kind of a seasonal river. And he'd lost his two friends on this river, but literally drowned. Two of the guys had drowned. And Francois had basically developed a passion, almost an infatuation, a little maybe on the unhealthy side, that he wanted to do this river. So he recruited Tim recruited Jerome, because this river had never been done before. And then Matt and I, who'd never even been in a kayak before, were like, yeah, we want to go. We can do this. So we started building our own kayaks. So we would go in our garages and stuff. And building kayaks means that you have to build with fiberglass and actually get inside the boat. Come on in. We're telling a story.
Filming a story. You're good. You're out of frame over there.
Come on. These are German friends. So we start building our kayaks, and we go through this whole thing, and eventually we provision this trip, and we go up north in Africa onto the Limpopo River, and we start in on this trip. And it's just crazy because we don't know we don't know Arthur from Martha. We don't know where the rapids are. We don't know where the waterfalls are. One point Jerome always would lead us, or Tim would lead us. He gets positioned out on this waterfall, literally the last rock. Somehow maneuvers the boat before he goes over the waterfall, comes back, standing on the rock. We throw him a rope. But the one I remember most distinctly is, as we started to go down the river, the crocs just got bigger and bigger. The crocodiles got bigger and bigger. And what it had been is the farmers had stopped hunting them. Basically, they'd just backed off them, got bigger. We'd get to these farmers, and they were like, they'd look at us, "You dom Engelsman," means you stupid Englishman. Why would you even go on this river? Because they would jump on one side of the river in their motorboat and rush their kids across to go to school to the other side. So gone along, and we saw on our map that it should be a place called Mabalel's Pool. And Mabalel's Pool was famous because this is the place where myth or stories had it that a crocodile had actually taken this black woman and actually killed her in the river. And so we started to talk about it, and we're like, oh, well, you know, shoot, no problem. We're young, we're tough, you know, these guys, we can out paddle this thing. If a big croc comes after us, pretty sure we can out paddle it, you know. So we came into this big pool, and 2 guys went to the right around the island, and 3 guys went around the other side. And this croc, I mean, thing was the size of the Queen Mary, jumps off this thing behind it. All we saw is this big splash, and then this thing came across the top of the water, maybe for just a few seconds, maybe more, but just like a motorboat. I mean, there was no contest. It was literally coming across the top of the water. So Jerome and Francois and myself, and Francois and I were the weakest paddlers. Jerome, of course, he's, you know, within seconds, he's got a boat in front of us. I just remember looking over at this Dutchman who I didn't really like very much. He was like, hey! And then pally, and I had about like 3 inches on him. But long story short, the crocodile went down. We didn't stop paddling for another week until we got out of that bloody thing. Our boats got washed away. So funny, because our parents got home after all this. They said, oh yeah, we read in the paper. You know, we made front page news because our boats got washed away. We were worried about you guys. We weren't sure where you were. They hadn't heard from us for 3 weeks. Our boats had got washed away. It's just crazy. These days they would have sent in a helicopter or something. But the Limpopo trip was classic. That was another month-long adventure. Craziness.
So you guys got the first ascent of this river? Yeah, we did.
There'd been another guy who'd done most of it. Van der Merwe was his name, and Van der Merwe, or Potgieter, I can't remember, but yeah, we got most of it. We couldn't go all the way to the ocean because that was Mozambique, and that was when the crazy guerrilla war was going on in Mozambique. But yeah, got chased by a hippo too. Lucky the hippo dove back in amongst his cows, so he didn't get to us that day. We paddled for another 3 days after that. So it's crazy stuff.